The MMA has a large scope of fighting leagues and styles under its umbrella, which means that a ton of different athletes and fans can be put under it for classification reasons. But I'm sure that there are some combatants and fans who would rather not be put in the same category as some of the names we are about to go over today. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at some of the dumbest moments in the history of MMA. Stick around because all of these boneheaded moments are going to have you questioning your fandom, I'm sure. And there is no better moment to kick this list off than the time when Kevin Randleman knocked himself out prior to a main event fight at UFC 24. When the UFC was still early in its infancy, main events were a huge deal, more so than now because winning this fight put your name up in lights.
For all the fans, I just want to say God bless all of you. I'm human, just like everybody. But for you.
Due to the UFC being so new, Kevin Randleman was a newcomer to the MMA scene and he was touted to become the next big thing in MMA. So when it was his turn to be in the spotlight, he wanted to create a reputation for himself. And while that is understandable, he decided to pick the worst reputation possible, the Psycho Fighter. Whenever the camera was on Randleman, he was sure to be as crazy as possible as a tactic to intimidate his opponents and all the other fighters in the UFC.
Just seeing Mirko Cro Cop go down like that, it was borderline unthinkable.
The tactic may or may not have been effective, but the entire shame fell through just before UFC 24, when he was set to face off against Pedro Rizzo. Randleman was in his dressing room getting himself hyped up when he allegedly slipped and hit his head on a pipe, knocking himself clean out in the process. Randleman also hurt his shoulder when he fell to the ground unconscious, which pushed this fight back a few months. Randleman's insane antics gave him a hilarious reputation as the fake tough guy, while simultaneously delaying his moment in the spotlight. It was seemingly just a speed bump on his path to victory, as he did eventually win his rescheduled matchup against Rizzo a few months later. But his stunt did cause him to have a lingering injury and thus didn't do much fighting after his win at UFC 26. Randleman will always be the biggest instance of wondering what could have been in the UFC, as he was supposed to be the next big thing.
This was Kevin Randleman. The passion that he had, the showman that he was an athlete.
But was more like a flash in the pan. Another wasted opportunity and stupid moment in MMA history comes from Jesse Taylor. If you're a fan of The Ultimate Fighter, then you may recognize that name, as Taylor earned his way to the finals, which garnered a spot on the Spike TV finale. Taylor was set to have a career in the UFC, as a spot in TUF's finale usually means that the UFC will take you on at least for a few fights. Taylor, however, found a way to squander all of his opportunities in a single night. Taylor was sent down to the finale of his season of The Ultimate Fighter in Las Vegas, but when he got there, he did an insane amount of damage to the limo he was riding in. When the limo dropped him off on the strip, he immediately entered bars and began to drunkenly harass as many women as possible, all while bragging about how he was going to be in the UFC. Well, of course, Dana White lives in Vegas, so it did not take very long for White to get wind of what was going on. White called up Taylor personally and told him that he had lost his spot in the finale and that he would never become a UFC fighter. Taylor's horrid decision-making cost him a shot at having a career in the UFC and potentially being one of the greatest fighters in history. But instead, he made one of the dumbest decisions in the history of MMA. Speaking of dumb decisions that cost a career, do any of you remember Paul Daly? Daly was one of the best up-and-coming international fighters the UFC has ever encountered. Even to this day, Daly's knockout ability and his determination and focus allowed him to gain attention from all over the world.
A fighter thinks that he hurts on Fedor when he lost after 32 straight fights to Fabrice Verdun. And it is all over. Paul Daly.
But in a very important bout against Josh Koscheck, everything went downhill. Daly made a living off of punching people into a state of unconsciousness, but Koscheck was a different fighter altogether. Koscheck was a grappler, and a skilled one at that, so when he got into the ring against Daly, he knew he had to get in tight. Koscheck completed his goal early and pulverized Daly for the entire fight. When the final bell went off, Daly had survived being tapped out, but he knew he was going to lose, so he did what any reasonable up-and-coming fighter would do, especially with thousands of scouting eyes on him. He punched Koscheck square in the chin. Koscheck was shaken up but was alright, and earned the win via DQ, even though he was certainly going to win the fight via decision. Daly was called up by Dana White, who personally told him that he would never fight in the UFC thanks to his idiotic choice. Daly went down to Strikeforce for a bit until the UFC bought Strikeforce and promptly booted him from that as well. Someone who should have been booted from our screen years ago takes home the final dumb moment. However, Nick Diaz, quite possibly the most insane human being to not be in an insane asylum.
11 seconds. Diaz going in for the kill. And it's over. Diaz has made history.
Diaz has caused the MMA some real heartache over the years, and it hurts Dana White that he let it go on for as long as he did. But Diaz certainly had talent, and he did get the crowd riled up, but he went a bit over the top at the very infamous Strikeforce brawl in Music City. Strikeforce was having a televised event in Nashville when all hell broke loose. For some reason, Jason Miller, a well-known enemy of Jake Shields, was let into the cage with Jake Shields. Shields then wanted to be a tough guy, so he went up to Shields and gave him a nasty shove. Shields obviously took exception to the violence and decided that he was going to respond in an overtly violent way. This then caused Nick Diaz to do the only sensible thing and jump on into the fight between these two, which prompted the only bystander left, Gilbert Melendez, to join in also. So the four of them got into an unscheduled 4-man cage match, sort of like Tornado Tag from the WWE. And the worst part was, it was during a promotional segment on CBS, so there wasn't even supposed to be a fight in the first place, and these guys got into an intense and violent street fight on TV. The MMA suffered some serious damage after that incident, with thousands of people condemning the MMA and calling for combat sports to be put to an end. Of course, people were worried that their kids would be subjected to violence and senseless combat if they were to watch the UFC or Strikeforce. Luckily, the UFC and MMA in general recovered from this incident, but these 35 seconds of violence was easily the dumbest moment in MMA history. While there were a ton of other stupid moments to choose from, this one was the only one that almost got combat sports shut down altogether, so truthfully, it was an easy pick for us. Now all we have to hope for is that this moment never gets topped, but I'm sure someone will find a way to in the coming years. That's all we have for you guys today on the channel. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to comment which of these was your favorite dumb moment, and tell us which ones we missed. Don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we will see you all in the next video.